them cross the freeway. They've kind of, yeah, that's CHP. They've blocked them from even getting across the freeway here, and I don't know if that's just concern for yesterday when you had so many people gathering on the overpass of the freeway and throwing things at those officers below. But it looked like this group was probably trying to get to that other group, and John, if you can show us that just on the other side of the overpass here, I would assume that that group was trying to come over here and merge with this group, which they're not going to be able to do because those CHP officers have it blocked. This certainly, though, is the larger group right in front of this building. And John, is this the federal building? This is, right? Yeah.
Mike, yeah, I do know that this building here covering Los Angeles, if I had over the years, is where people normally go to fill out their immigration paperwork when they get to Los Angeles.
And
so, yep, it is a federal building.
And that's the National Guard standing right there. You see the shields, you see the tan camo uniforms where it says California National Guard.
Right.
And we do see a large group of folks there on the steps as protesters. But again, we keep mentioning that these folks are out there right now very peacefully. There have been no problems reported at this point. But there is definitely a large gathering. We do see some graffiti on those walls there around. Again, we were talking about all of the damage that was being done over the weekend. People, really writing a lot of
profanities really, yeah.
on the walls and really on signs, on poles. Really, it seemed like at one point, wherever they could, put some paint on, they were doing that. And right now, we don't see any of that mayhem. We just see a lot of people out there, but so far it is very calm and peaceful.
And Mike, do we know if anything is planned for this afternoon, anything that's the word's gotten out, or is this just kind of a repeat of what was happening over the last few days?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a repeat of what was happening over the last few days. I mean, the other thing that you guys have going on too is we have Mr. Huerta from SEIU. He was released from federal custody just about half an hour, 45 minutes ago. So he held a press conference. There was no plea today, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. He was bonded out on $50,000 bond. So we're watching, and I'm just checking with LAPD right now. They have not issued an unlawful assembly order. Last night there was the entirety of downtown became under an unlawful assembly order. So that has not been the case, at least so far today yet. They are, putting out information about traffic advisories, but they are not issuing an unlawful assembly yet.
Yeah, clearly the traffic is flowing on the freeway there, Mike. As you said, the people are outside the federal building out here. Things look pretty calm, so that's a good thing. When does the tide turn when they do declare an unlawful assembly? What would have to happen?
Yeah, as soon as the crowd becomes hostile towards the officers is when they start to do that. And I can tell you just timing-wise, last night it was around 4:30, 5 o'clock is when things started to shift. 5:20 is when the Waymos got set on fire. So it was right around that time. And actually, I can tell you when they declared the unlawful first yesterday. But that's what has to happen is it becomes when it's no longer safe for the officers or for the rest of the people in the downtown LA area. And yesterday, it looks like unlawful was declared.
Okay. Mike is looking at this time, and Mike has been talking about the fact that there have been 3 different groups that are all in different areas of downtown, all doing peaceful protests that we've heard so far. Our Jasmine Veal is at another area. SkyCal over this scene. Now we're going to get to Jasmine Veal. Jasmine, we've been seeing peaceful protests so far. How is it where you are?
Yeah, it's peaceful. They're chanting, holding the banners, holding the signs. We have really seen this crowd begin to grow over the last hour here near Olvera Street, the site of where those Waymos had burned yesterday on Sunday. And you can see these CHP officers, they're holding the line in riot gear here on Los Angeles and Arcadia Street. And so I'm with one group of protesters. A few yards down, another larger group of protesters are holding their rally and march, and they moved from the LA Historic Plaza down Los Angeles Street. And these officers, though, with CHP, with the LAPD, they have been blocking those on and off ramps for the entire day. I mean, we had to take surface streets just to get up here to see some of the damage that was caused during Sunday's protest that escalated into the vandalism and the looting and the arson and some of that destruction that we saw being repaired today, graffiti being painted over, windows that had been cracked, boarded up. But But the group here wanting to get their message out, we did learn, and I just got confirmation as I've been talking to U.S. Northern Command that they have activated the Marine Infantry Battalion that was placed on that alert status over the weekend. So about 700 Marines are on their way. They could not give me an exact timeline of their arrival here to L.A., but they say they're going to assist the 2,000 National Guard members that have been federalized. We know about 300 of those National Guard troops have been here around the federal buildings in L.A., in Compton, in the Paramount area. But as you're taking a look at the group out here today, some have come prepared with face masks, banners and masks covering their faces. We saw that pepper spray has been used. We've seen the smoke bombs. So, you know, a lot down here have their heads and faces covered, but standing here and using bullhorns or megaphones to chant in the deportation. And again, this has just really grown over the last hour or so. This has just really grown over the last hour or so for a fourth day, right? Promising. I've heard this from some of their organizers and leaders, one standing on a flatbed truck right along Main Street, saying that they have taken to the streets now for a fourth day, and they're promising to continue to do this. They want the National Guard out. Obviously, now with the Marines coming in, that will be part of their message. They say they want ICE out, and they want to protect immigrant rights. A lot of the signs are too vulgar to show. We're trying to protect some of that language, spray painted over several blocks here. Again, this is really the heart of downtown. I can see the detention center off to my left. I can see City Hall. This is where the majority of these protests that I was talking to one woman, a mother yesterday, that she says have been peaceful, that she was out here for hours yesterday up until things started to escalate, and she noticed other people who did not seem like the usual protesters arriving, and she just felt that they were out here to cause to do a few harmful acts, and she wanted to get out of there with her husband. But other than that, she said she was very proud to be here. The woman I was talking to, Jamie Klein, is a Chinese Mexican, and she grew up here, and she's very proud of LA and her heritage. People living here in downtown LA, they also were proud, they say, to see these marches and rallies taking place, but of course appalled by the violence, by any destruction. And the mayor also tweeting about just that today. I want to read you some of what she just posted within the last hour. Some of her messages, of course, to not do any harm, writing on X that people need to protest peacefully, that Trump did not, she says, inherit a crisis, he created one. Mayor Bass also said that everything here is just stoking the fire of lawlessness and chaos. Alongside him, LA will hold you accountable, she writes. She says she has met with LA immigrant rights community leaders today as they are responding to this chaotic escalation by the administration. Again, 700 Marines, the U.S. Northern Command telling me on the way here to Los Angeles. I'll send it back to you guys. And again, you see chanting, people standing, and the CHP officers there in riot gear holding the line here at Arcadia and Los Angeles, right above the 101 freeway.
Yeah, we clearly see that, Jasmine. Have you had a chance to speak with any of the protesters at all today? I mean, it's nice to see that things are calm today. We haven't seen anything develop so far today.
Yeah, and that's what they've been telling me, that they want things to remain calm so that they can get their message out, so that the administration listens to them, because that message is lost when it escalates into violence and destruction. I mean, this whole historic building behind me here near Olvera Street, covered in graffiti. The windows had been smashed. A lot of the repairs being made today to cover up some of the broken glass, and, you know, LA City Services out here doing their work to clean up their graffiti. But, you know, this is what, you know, police expected would happen today. That's why we saw very heavy police presence all day long. They knew that, you know, more rallies and marches and protests like this would be happening as the workday comes to, well, I guess we're not quite done with the workday, but around 3 p.m. or so, 2 p.m., that's when people started to gather once again here right in the heart of downtown.
Yes, and as Jasmine was mentioning, 700 Marines coming from 29 Palms. They'll be joining the National Guard, of course, our own LAPD and LA County Sheriffs, and we know that the CHP was involved as well yesterday, trying to keep order on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. we still have another large crowd. But as we watch that image, not only from Jasmine, but also from SkyCal, we can see there are a lot of people that have gathered. But at this point, it is very peaceful. A lot of the damage that we have seen on the walls that Jasmine was talking about, that actually happened over the weekend. We have not been seeing anyone do anything like that so far this afternoon. But again, we talked about it was a small group of people that were actually causing the damage, that was setting those Waymos on fire. Mike, you were covering all of this last night, watching it live as it was happening, and giving us really a play-by-play.
Yeah, it was really intense last night. There was a lot of very chaotic situations. Lori Perez was in one where a van who almost seemed to be targeting the protesters nearly hit her where she was at. That person, I learned, was arrested for attempted murder. Assault with a deadly weapon. Guys, I also just got some numbers from the LAPD about the arrests that were made both Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, 29 people were arrested only for failure to disperse. Yesterday, they made 21 arrests. Charges ranged, and we saw this actually happen live. Attempted murder with a Molotov cocktail. We saw that happen. It was thrown at a horse. Police horse, assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, looting, and failure to disperse. They say during the course of the protests and demonstrations, they erected barricades. And I want to point something out here because it is generally LAPD's policy to not use tear gas on protesters. That changed last night. Last night, the LAPD says they were given the approval or the authority, authorized rather, to use handheld CS gas canisters to disperse the crowd. So it's different than what CHP and the sheriffs use. They'll actually use them out of launchers. LAPD says they used handheld gas canisters to disperse the hostile crowd. They said it was the chemical agent, they say, was effective. Barricades were dismantled. And we pointed this out last night because we could actually see it littering the road. They used over 600 rounds of less lethal munitions. Wow. So 600 rounds of those foam projectiles that they were shooting at the ground that were then ricocheting up towards the crowd. They also say 5 LAPD officers sustained minor injuries during the confrontation. 5 LAPD horses were injured during the confrontation. Wow. And they say it took them until about 2:30 in the morning until the crowd dispersed enough that LAPD could begin demobilizing. What is also interesting, the LAPD says they were encountering groups of people that were using handheld radios to communicate with other people within the crowd to coordinate how they were going to, kind of evade LAPD. And that was something the chief mentioned last night during one of his press conferences. Some of these people are known for doing this. They go from city to city. Someone used the word professionals, protesters. I mean, you have people, we saw somebody show up with a leaf blower to blow away the tear gas when it was being sprayed at them. We saw people show up with hammers to break away the concrete to be able to throw it on rocks. People that were clearly prepared to come in and do this. And we saw some protesters even wearing gas masks so that the tear gas would be ineffective if law enforcement used it against them.
And Mike, I have to say, I'm surprised that only one was charged with attempted murder for throwing that Molotov cocktail, but we saw all of those people throwing things at those officers that were seeking shelter.
On the freeway.
On the freeway. And none of those people.
So, no, I'm not yet. Anyway, I mean, that would be CHP. These numbers are from LAPD. CHP was the ones that were getting things thrown at them. But, I mean, CHP was in such a position that they were just trying to not get hurt, that they weren't really affecting arrests. All they were doing was shooting less lethal munitions at them, tossing tear gas at them, just to get them away long enough to be able to move and get themselves to safety. So I think what's going to happen, and we saw this so much last night, almost to a very discouraging level, is so many people were taking social media videos and pictures and almost, kind of bragging about the things that they were doing. Law enforcement will now use all of those to try to find these people, charge them, arrest them. The FBI has already put out posters with social media video looking for people that they accuse of injuring federal officers.
Well, there was something very similar happened during the January 6th attack on the Capitol as well.
The feds used that for the better part of a year, 2 years to be able to
found a lot of
track down people.
Yes.
All right, well, we're looking there, the shot on the right side of your screen, traffic flowing down there through downtown Los Angeles on the 110 freeway. And on the streets of Los Angeles on the left, SkyCal showing us the federal building there. That is where a lot of people show up to submit immigration paperwork. You oftentimes see a long line of people outside waiting to get inside to get whatever they need done there. So it makes sense that this crowd has gathered there, a large crowd, and even in the 30 or so minutes that we've been on the air, we can tell that the crowd has gotten a little larger.
Yeah, and on the right side, we can actually see they are moving. They were gathered, and now we see that they're actually moving along the freeway there. Is that the 101 or is that the 110?
I think that's still the 101.
101 on the right side there, and they are walking alongside that, the 101.
And I think, and John, so what's noticeably different too is we had that skirmish line of officers. Now they have parked a ton of patrol cars right there as well. And I think that group just, they were sitting right here. They've walked around the patrol cars, and now they're kind of on the other side. And John, if you can go back to the right a little bit, that group is now, I believe, merged with the larger group that is over there. You can still see some of them kind of walking. They came through this way, and now they're going to go join that other group. So I'm not really sure why CHP didn't want them to cross right there, but all they did was go down a block and come over.
Yeah. And they are trying to keep all of these protesters off of the freeways there, keep them off of the 101. We know as we now get closer to 3:30 that there will be more traffic in the downtown area as more people start to leave their jobs, heading home for the day, that, they want to keep all of these people away from those freeways because we know things will get definitely a lot worse if they make it there.
And Mike, going back to something you said just moments ago, which we talk about the professional agitators that police saw, people using handheld radios to talk to others within the crowd. And it really was surprising to watch, as you were mentioning. I saw a shot from SkyCal where you could see people barricaded themselves behind from SkyCal just looked like a pink barricade, which turned out to be those pink benches
and
from
tables.
Grand Park. I mean, that is incredible that they could rip something like that out of probably a bolted cement foundation and move it around like the way they did. And we did see it on video where they were breaking the parts of the curb, grabbing landscaping rocks, anything to throw it down to the CHP officers.
I mean, they even ripped a street sign that was concreted into the ground and somehow were able to get that out of the dirt and pick it up and throw it over the overpass down onto the CHP cars.
Right.
And, some of those CHP officers, I mean, they would come out and they would try to put, they'd throw something down, light it on fire, and then CHP would try to poke out and use a fire extinguisher to put it out. I even saw one CHP officer use his OC spray, his pepper spray, to try to put the flames out. But as soon as they even, for a second, poked their head out, then you have, more rocks and chunks of concrete being thrown at the officers. So it was a very, very, very tense situation. I mean, out of everything that happened last night, for a law enforcement perspective, that was, I think, when they were kind of in one of the more dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And then
it was scary.
Yeah, and then of course we had that van situation. I mean, it was not a good situation last night at all.
No, and we were just showing there on the right side of your screen, it looked like the officers were also moving. We've seen the protesters moving, but it looked like a group of, I believe, LAPD officers were just moving into a new position. I'm not sure what they were moving towards, or, if it's a group or if they're trying to get closer to that larger group. It's hard to say at this point from this vantage point, but I do know that SkyCal is trying to show us many angles, but also we want to continue to mention that so far these groups have been peaceful. We have not seen any problems at this point.
So
we
far
have not
today,
seen any vandalism. I know it's a very different scene from what Mike was just talking about from last night, where we saw a store being looted. We saw Waymos set on fire, at least 3 of them. We saw so much graffiti happening. And as Mike was talking about, that van that was really just racing through the streets, was near one of our reporters.
Which, by the way, I followed up with East Los Angeles Sheriff Station today because they ended up arresting him after we followed him with SkyCal. He had a gun on him the whole time. Oh, wow. So they ended up arresting him for assault with a deadly weapon, which would have been the van. They also arrested him for felon in possession of a firearm. Oh, wow. So that means he was armed at the time. And when those sheriff's deputies caught up with him, he was in the process of switching cars. So he was in the minivan, and then he was getting into a white SUV, and he had walked back to the minivan for a second, I think, to get something, when the sheriff's deputies pulled up and took him into custody.
And thankfully they did, because that was some crazy driving that we saw, and even blew by one of our crews that were out there last night.
Yeah, I mean, we were right in that same spot. He started doing reverse donuts in the intersection, and then turned and came back and gunned it right towards the crowd and slammed on the brakes. That's where our Lori Perez was.
Right.
I was also tagged in some social media video, which appears to be the same person doing something similar the night before on Saturday night. So I don't know what this person's kind of deal is, but he seemed to be out there, and his driving was so dangerous. He nearly clipped a bicycle at Union Station.
You saw that,
I saw the bicyclist fall off because he got so close to him. I mean, it was remarkable that nobody got seriously hurt in that.
Do we know if that van was stolen?
I don't know the answer to that. They didn't arrest him for it. So when I talked to the watch commander today at East LA Station, the only charges he was facing was the assault with a deadly weapon and the felon in possession of a firearm. They didn't charge him with, I was wondering if they were going to try to charge him with DUI or anything, if he was under the influence, but didn't charge him with that and didn't charge him with any kind of stolen vehicle charge.
And then dumping the van and then easily getting into the white truck. Pretty amazing that he was able to do that. What are we seeing here, Mike?
We are hearing that the city is putting out a tactical alert. Is that what I'm hearing? We are seeing this crowd right here on the right side of your screen grow, and now they are in the middle of the street. They were just kind of on the steps on the sidewalk, but now they are in the middle of that roadway there. And I'm trying to, is that, Juan, you may know better than I, which street that is there in front of that building?
On the left
is it Los Angeles Street?
Yeah, where the crowd is Los Angeles Street.
Los Angeles.
And then the left side is the Metropolitan Detention Center.
That's right.
Okay. So we are watching and we are hearing that a tactical alert is being issued. We don't know if it's just because the crowds are growing or if there is now a problem that is happening, that they are responding to some type of incident. But so far, we have not heard of any skirmishes, anything happening other than this large crowd growing right there in front of that federal building.
And maybe that's it, right? Just the crowd is growing and they want to get all units available and ready to go if they need to, right, Mike?
Yeah, so basically what it means is anybody that's in a uniform is not allowed to leave. So, and that is citywide. They can do it differently. They can do a modified tactical alert where you do it bureau by bureau. They have chosen to do a citywide tactical alert where anybody in the city that is on duty is not allowed to leave at this point. And we saw that last night. I mean, we saw officers that would normally patrol the streets of Sylmar in downtown LA, that would normally patrol the streets of Venice in downtown LA. So they were pulling from everywhere to be able to handle this issue. And, you know, as the day goes on, or as the days go on of these protests, the law enforcement gets more and more coordinated, more and more kind of, you know, ready to handle these things. More and more CHP officers are showing up. You know, the LA County Sheriff Robert Luna, he told us on the phone last night that he activated the mutual aid plan for the county. So that's where you get Pasadena PD, Burbank PD, Alhambra PD, all of these other smaller cities that will then send officers. Because remember, as much as LAPD has to deal with downtown, this is a small fraction of the city. This is, when you look at geographically, this is not a large portion of the city. This is several blocks of what is a very, very big city. The LAPD still has to patrol and respond to 911 calls in the rest of the city. So having that mutual aid from CHP, the sheriff, the outside agencies will allow LAPD to have to draw on less of their resources to make sure that they can still cover the rest of the city.
And the mayor did say that they were outmanned.
Yeah.
So to a certain point, there were definitely a lot more protesters and they have officers on the street. Right. So I guess any help they can get there is not a bad thing.
Yeah. We watched also, we saw up in SkyCal, they were showing one of the CHP trucks pulling up a type of white trailer type item. I was wondering what that might be filled with, if they're just pulling out more gear to help in this. Yeah, that's that one right there.
See it right there, Mike?
With that white
little utility trailer there. Yeah, it's hard to tell what they've got back there. I mean, it may be you know, shields, it may be more kind of less lethal munitions, tear gas. It could be anything
water.
Those, water, anything those officers might need. You'll notice, and John, if you can double in on the windshields there, they've got markers on the windshields. So see the writing on each of the windshields? So that's how CHP is coordinating. Each of the cars has a different kind of marker, and that's how they're, you know, identifying which units they want where, how they're going to do this, who they report to. So everybody's got a clear, I mean, this is a very coordinated effort, which Chief Jim McDonald was talking about last night. So Friday night, when Friday night's issue happened, you know, it was largely the federal agents that were dealing with things. Saturday morning, ICE put out a statement slamming the city of LA and slamming LAPD, saying it took LAPD 2 hours to respond to the federal government's request for help. Yesterday, last night, Chief Jim McDonald wholly denied that and said it took us 38 minutes to respond. Also criticized the federal government, saying you didn't give us any notice that you were going to be here. We were not able to deploy and be ready for this situation. So we scrambled what we could within 38 minutes to come help you. He absolutely denied the accusation by ICE that it took LAPD 2 hours to respond to the location. And what they had to do is form what they call mobile field forces. So when you get crowds like this, they're not just going to send a patrol car with 2 officers in. They're going to form what are called mobile field forces, and that will bring 4, 8, however many group of officers they can get in and get them into a position very quickly. And that's what has to happen. That's how they have to act when they don't have, pre-knowledge that something is going to happen. So that's what, the chief was saying yesterday. As the days go on, they are becoming more and more prepared. more and more coordinated with outside agencies within their own agency. So we start to see this more kind of cohesive response from law enforcement as this continues.
Mike, earlier you were telling us the president of SEIU bailed out $50,000 bond there, and we're wondering with the people that are detained, do we know whether they're still detained?
So we don't. I mean, that's been one of the issues that we've had. So ICE on Saturday morning said, you know, we arrested, I think it was Friday night, they said that they detained 44 people.
44, yeah.
You know, David Huerta was number 45, but 44 for immigration issues. David Huerta was number 45. Then Saturday morning, ICE puts out a statement that says, you know, these people were accused of a litany of what they called violent crimes. But ICE will never actually tell us who is accused of what. They always give us this kind of list of crimes that they say these people are alleged to have committed. We follow up with them and we say, which people are you accusing of which crimes? And we never get that answer back from them.
So unless we hear from the family, Mike, we have to assume that they're still in custody, right?
Or attorneys. I mean, we spoke with that attorney member Thursday night, who said my client actually has an order of a stay order from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, but they detained him anyway. So it's just this kind of fluid thing. And the problem is if they're not, the people that they're detaining on immigration issues, they're not necessarily sending them to criminal court. So we can't follow that process through the criminal court system because they're not going through the criminal court system. They're going through the immigration court system, which makes it much harder for us to track.
Yeah, and a lot of those families are saying they don't know where their loved ones are. They're left in the dark. We want to go back to our Jasmine Veal, who is on the ground there near Olvera Street, I believe, still where that crowd was growing. Jasmine, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Hi, Amy. So we have just kind of walked with this crowd. They've all came together now right in front of the Robert Young Federal Building. You can see the show of force there, or the National Guard troops that have been deployed here and federalized to protect these federal buildings. They are standing alongside the LAPD, I believe, in the riot gear, and this is where the groups have all come together, because we were with one that marched up Los Angeles Street here. Cars are now stopped. A lot of people just getting dropped off or jumping out of the vehicles with signs and banners to join this crowd here on Los Angeles Street, right next to the Los Angeles Mall, which is across the street from LA City Hall. But again, this is a Robert Young building as we get a little bit closer here. To show you as they are facing the officers in the riot gear, keeping them from moving any further into the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement building, where, which was the whole focal point over the weekend, the fourth day of these protests that are happening. And we have seen protesters prepared, I guess they tell me, for the worst if they get hit with pepper spray. One girl had knee pads and elbow pads on because she said she had been hit with rubber bullets yesterday. So she came with knee pads, gloves that were fire resistant. She came with a whole gas mask, smoke mask on, and so she doesn't have to be, breathing in the pepper spray. As she says, that's what she'd been faced with all weekend long, and what we've heard from as the crowd was pushed back over the last few days, which they had all gathered, rallying against the multiple immigration operations that took place across LA since Friday, starting at the clothing warehouse in the Fashion District with those search warrants. But again, from the LAPD, and some of the numbers changing, of course, but with those arrests, telling me 31 people were arrested over the weekend. And we want to keep things peaceful. These protesters tell me they want to just make their voices heard. They don't want to have clashes with officers, but they want to be able to stand here and tell, and according to many of them, they want ICE out completely. They want to see the National Guard leave. And now with the deployment of Marines, that they're going to be adding that to their list of demands. To city leaders who have also said this is only escalating the tensions by having the National Guard here. So they want to protect immigrant rights, they tell me. Again, the military, the U.S. Northern Command saying we have about 700 Marines deploying here to L.A. They didn't know exactly when, or they couldn't tell me the timeline. I'll try to figure that out. Standing down here, a lot of protesters don't know either what they're going to be facing in the next few hours, but they say they're going to be out here day after day, and that's what I heard. A lot of them gathered on top of a truck on Main Street, and they had a band playing, and they had a lot of drums, and they had the loudspeakers. Just saying that let's do this day in and day out until we get what we want, Amy.
All right, Jasmine, and I mean, we want to keep reminding folks that these groups of people that have gathered here, Jasmine was talking about how they've kind of merged together, making that group bigger. Right now, this is very peaceful. We hear the drums, we hear the chanting, but we have not seen any, fighting breaking out. We have not seen anyone throwing any items. We haven't seen anything but peaceful protest happening right here at the federal building. And Mike Rogers at the Breaking News Desk. Mike, you were talking about those 700 Marines that were coming from 29 Palms, and you have a statement?
Yeah, LAPD Chief Jim McDonald just put out a statement saying, quote, the LAPD has not received any formal notification that the Marines will be arriving in Los Angeles. However, the possible arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles, absent clear coordination, presents a significant logistical and operational challenge for those of us charged with safeguarding the city. He says the Los Angeles Police Department, alongside our mutual aid partners, have decades of experience managing large-scale public demonstrations, and we remain confident in our ability to do so professionally and effectively. He goes on to say, that said, our top priority is the safety of both the public and the officers on the ground. We are urging open and continuous lines of communication between all agencies to prevent confusion, avoid escalation, and ensure a coordinated, lawful, and orderly response during this critical time. Again, that is LAPD Chief Jim McDonald saying that they have not been formally notified that Marines are coming to the city, and if they do, it presents, without coordination, it presents significant logistical and operational challenges. And I want to go back to a point that he mentioned in here, that our law enforcement agencies have decades of experience dealing with civil unrest, protests, riots here in the city of LA. You bring in these federal agents or military members that don't know maybe necessarily the streets of LA, don't know the crowds. I mean, it can't communicate with local law enforcement. It does present a lot of concerns and challenges, as the chief here is acknowledging and saying that they have not even received formal notification, which is concerning that we have received notification from the military, but the chief of police for the Los Angeles Police Department has not.
And communication is key here, right, Mike? I mean, if the police chief has to hold officers back, put the city on tactical alert, and just staffing issues as well. If they don't know what's going on, it's almost like a surprise attack. They just don't know what's happening.
Exactly. Between the National Guard, the Marines, LAPD, CHP, LA County Sheriff's Department, I mean, you've got a lot of agencies all here, all trying to protect the streets of LA. But if they're not all on the same page, it could certainly pose some big problems.
Well, and it really goes to the role, what is going to be the role of the Marines? Is it going to be the same as the role of the National Guard? Because despite what the president, posted on True Social, the National Guard has not left the steps of federal property. So if that's where they stay and they leave the crowd to local law enforcement, then that probably will work out. But if you have the National Guard and members of the Marines trying to come into the streets and deal with protesters, that certainly presents a whole different situation. One more thing that the chief brought up last night was that now that the National Guard has been federalized, we don't have access to the National Guard because the governor is not in charge of them anymore. The president has taken over control of the National Guard, which means even if we wanted the National Guard to come help LAPD, the governor doesn't have that ability anymore because they have been federalized.
So the California National Guard is now reporting to the federal government.
Correct, which does not happen, by the way. CBS News says alone the president has not taken over the National Guard without the consent of the governor since 1965. More recently, in 1992, California National Guard tells me during the riots, the LA riots of 92, they were activated by the governor and then taken over by the president. But the president solely alone federalizing the California National Guard has not happened since 1965.
Wow. Okay. We want to check in with our Jeff Nguyen. He is also on the ground here at this large protest that just seems to be growing by the minute. Jeff, we've seen some groups actually merge together in this area.
Yeah, so Amy and Juan, we are outside the federal building. It's right across the street from the Los Angeles Mall, and we are on some planters, so we are able to get a little bit higher and give you a better vantage point. As you can see, traffic is basically semi-flowing through one lane right now. There are a lot of folks here who are joining with the demonstration as they have stopped in one of the two lanes that is heading westward to kind of take in some of this. You know, you guys and Mike have been talking about the National Guard being federalized, and we are certainly seeing some of that in front of the federal building right here, where you see members of the National Guard with their shields and their riot gear and their helmets and face shields standing on the steps of the federal building. One of the reasons why this group has congregated here is because the federal building complex is right next to the detention center where a number of detainees have been held and processed. The reason we know that is because David Huerta has been held at the federal detention center since Friday, and he was released on bond earlier this afternoon. So we heard from him that he and some other detainees were held in there over the weekend. And so a number of people today went over to the other side, which is the Temple side, and the Alameda side, to protest and demonstrate outside the federal detention center. A lot of that had to do with a group of clergy members organizing the demonstration, saying that they wanted to get inside the detention center to check on the detainees, to make sure that they are treated well, that they are nourished, that they have food and water and all of the necessities of life. And also on top of that, they wanted to make sure that the detainees are getting legal aid that they are entitled to. But the overarching message from the demonstrators earlier outside the detention center was that they wanted to make sure that the detainees are getting due process. We spoke to one of the clergy members earlier. I hope the control room has that ready to go. If we may, let's go ahead and play that for you, and then we'll come back and show you more of what's going on out here.
We asked a simple question: where are the families? We wanted to make sure they understand that this is a sanctuary city, and that we want them collaborating with the federal government. We want to make sure that everyone can do their First Amendment protest rights. I think it's a small group of people that are being violent. I think the majority of Angelenos are standing up and saying, where are our fathers? Where are our mothers? It's illegal to rip children away from their parents. And so we are standing here nonviolently to reaffirm that is Los Angeles character, that we have the moral high ground in this situation, that we would not be intimidated by fear by Washington, D.C.
You know, we mentioned David Huerta and him being held or detained over the weekend and then released today. In the interest of fairness, we also have to give you the flip side of this issue as well, because the U.S. Attorney's Office, in their complaint filed through the Central District of Los Angeles, prosecutors say that agents were serving 4 search warrants in 4 businesses around Southern California last Friday. And what they were doing was that they suspected people were unlawfully employing illegal aliens and falsifying employment records. That is why they were able to get those search warrants from a judge. On top of that, prosecutors, in terms of David Huerta, says that because David Huerta was being uncooperative, that is why they had to take him into custody. But right now, out here, as you look live, you can see that a lot of people are very emotional about this subject. They feel that the use of the National Guard is not something that they want to see out here, and that is why they have demonstrated. But we should tell you that throughout the day, things have been relatively peaceful. There was one moment where we did see someone throw like a bottle towards LAPD, and the officers stayed in place. They did not respond in kind. However, at about 1:30 or so, soon after that bottle was thrown, one of the officers did get on the loudspeaker and say that this was an unlawful assembly and people had to leave. And so by and large, most of those people did leave the corner of Aliso and Alameda, which is about 2 blocks from where we are. And since then, they kind of have gathered out here. And you can see the sort of posture that we have out here at the front of the door. You have CHP officers in their ride gears and their shields, along with the National Guards. You have just probably a couple of hundred people on the streets, as well as in cars, waving flags and then chanting. And the other thing to keep in mind too, Ari, if you wouldn't mind, be careful as you step forward. Come forward here, and I'm going to ask you, Ari, to kind of pivot towards your left and show all of the LAPD officers by the freeway. I apologize at home if you saw some of the graffiti out here and some of the bad language, but we're trying our best to be very mindful of that. We can see how the CHP as well as the LAPD have basically closed off that part of Los Angeles Street and Aliso to make sure that people don't get on the freeway. And the other part, too, is they also want to control the flow of traffic as well. So one of the things that hopefully will take place is that they can get ahead of this so that more people don't pour in. But right now, Ari, go ahead and kind of tilt your camera up and then pan over. Basically, he's panning high so that we can avoid some of the bad language. But we want to show you the crowd out here. And right now, people are just basically chanting, but the posture is not confrontational, but by no means do we have any sort of a détente, if you will. That's the latest from here. I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jeff, from a reporter's standpoint, just watching your pictures and hearing you talk and watching the people going through the crowd, I see young and old people with children, a very different situation than what we saw yesterday. It does seem like these folks out here, they want to get their message across. This is still a very hot topic. These people who were taken away from their families are still in custody. So again, a very different, I mean, I know when you're out there, you kind of feel it. Your reporter's sense tells you how the situation is going, and it looks like it is a lot better.
Yeah, you know, I think, look, there are two stories to be told here, right? There are people who are demonstrating in earnest, and then there are people who we'll call agitators, who are a small section of what's happening out here. By and large, this is what you have. For a lot of Southern Californians, they feel that this is a personal matter to them because they identify with the people who are the detainees, and they feel that if their neighbor can be taken in, they can be taken in. And so people are exercising their First Amendment rights. Whether or not you agree or disagree with them, you know, this is a part of what it means to be an American, and you are allowed to do this. Having said that, the mayor has touched on this. Police Chief McDonald has touched on this. It just takes a small group of people who come in and want to take this situation and take it in a different direction. You know, when they do that, when you see the chaos and destruction and the violence, it takes away from all of this,
That's right.
which is the earnest message that people are trying to convey. So I think that, you know, we have to be responsible to not lump those two groups together, right? They are very different things. There are people who want to express how they feel about the use of the National Guard, how they feel about the use of federal agents going into businesses and serving warrants. You know, the thing is that although the U.S. Attorney says that these warrants were signed off by a judge and they were able to serve these warrants, critics of the federal government also want to see copies of that as well. So I think that's why there is so much stirred up emotion on, you know, on the sides of people who are criticizing what the White House is doing or what this current administration is doing. Guys?
All right, Jeff Nguyen reporting live for us there on the ground. Also nearby is our Jasmine Veal. And we want to check back in with Jasmine. Jasmine, we understand that you have someone with you now that we're going to hear from.
Yeah, we have some young women. They have been out here with the group protesting all day today, actually, and now they're ready to leave. I want to talk to Bella first, 22 years old. But Bella, you're trying to kind of get out of here at this point because you're just worried about what?
I don't know. It's kind of starting to get a little hectic. The crowds are getting bigger. We were here earlier when it was like a smaller group, and I think we're just ready to go home. But all the train stations are closed. We took the metro here, and the little Tokyo station's closed, Union Station's closed, and we're trying to get to Chinatown over there, but these streets are closed off, so we're trying to figure out how to get home.
More difficult than you expected with so many people now arriving, and we saw two kind of groups of protesters merge into one in front of the federal building here at U.S. Customs Enforcement, Immigration and Enforcement. But Bella, you were telling me, you know, being out here for hours today, how were things, the mood?
I feel like it's been peaceful, a peaceful protest, and I feel like that's not really what's getting shown. I feel like everybody's just seeing the fires and, you know, people throwing stuff, but there's been a lot of people marching around peacefully with their signs, respectfully, you know, like voicing their opinion, out here for human rights, like, yeah.
And you saw what happened over the weekend, though, where things did escalate, and there was some damage. Waymos burned just down Los Angeles Street here.
Yeah.
A lot of graffiti. What do you say to that?
I don't know. I don't think, you know, it's not great. But I feel like people are, you know, using their right to speak their opinion and voice their truth, but I think there's been a lot of destruction that hopefully, could have been avoided, but I get people are really upset and there's, high tensions going on with the situation.
So what was the message, the overall message that you want to get out to the administration, to city, county, state leaders?
I feel like we need to know, this is a basic human right issue. We don't need to be separating families. I feel like there's much more pressing things going on out there that need attention. I don't think the National Guard is really needed out here. I feel like this looks very provoking. I don't know. I just think we need to reunite these families, and what's being done is really messed up, and it needs to change.
But you're ready to go with your best friend here. You've been out here as well with Bella. What's your name?
I'm Ashley.
Hi, Ashley. You have a sign, Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
These are CHP officers behind you guys, holding the line here, the on and off ramps of the 101 freeway, not wanting to see what happened on Sunday and over the weekend where the freeway had to shut down, essentially. We have National Guard troops in front of us, kind of mixed in here. What are your thoughts, though? Overall, how did the day go for you?
I mean, the day, like Bella said, it was a really peaceful protest. We were first down at Grand, and there was a big crowd, a lot of speakers. Over here, the crowd's getting larger, but it's remained peaceful. Nobody's throwing anything. Nobody's, people are just exercising their freedom of speech and marching.
Folks show up in gas masks, though. I mean, some have come prepared with bandanas, and they have knee pads on to not get hit by rubber bullets.
Yeah, all the cops, they look ready to go. They're batons in hand, rifles in hand.
Ready to have that.
Ready to have that.
I feel like that adds to the aggression, although they're trying to just keep the peace.
For sure, yeah, and they're not saying much. We've asked a couple, where do we go? They have a lot of the train stations blocked. It's difficult. You can't really call an Uber because Ubers can't get in. So, yeah, it's a lot.
It is difficult. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Bella, for the time. Good luck getting home and be safe. We have just seen a bunch of cars get stuck here in a traffic jam, and people just jumping out with signs. We're not even sure how they were able to get through here, because we too are stuck behind these barriers and the blockades, and you can't get off the freeway. So they've really had to take the long route to get around. And that's what we also heard. I was talking to a mom, again, Jamie Klein, who was here yesterday, and the metro was also shut down as she and her husband tried to get back home when things began to escalate. And it seems to be kind of the same situation today. And there are a lot of people, and I predict more will be showing up as the workday comes to an end. And so hopefully things remain peaceful and just remain chanting as they are, making their voices heard, and obviously here to do that, in solidarity, they tell me, showing up like Ashley and Bella with family, with friends. Yesterday, families were out walking around, I was told, kids with their parents. Amy, Juan?
All right, Jasmine, thank you very much. And we'd like to welcome in our viewers here at 4 o'clock. This is KCAL News at 4 o'clock. And we begin with breaking news here at 4. As you see here, a crowd of protesters gathering once again in downtown L.A. for the 4th consecutive day.
Yes, SkyCal is overhead, and assignment editor Mike Rogers is monitoring from the desk. And Mike, they have been peaceful so far, but we're starting to see these crowds really grow.
Shuffling and moving around, Mike.
Yeah, and it looks like there was a bit of a fight between themselves. We saw just a couple minutes ago while Jasmine was talking, one person kind of get into a clash with another person. And then all of a sudden, we are starting to see this group kind of run a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what they're running from. Law enforcement has not moved in here at all. So they're there. I mean, we've got the National Guard that has been on the steps of the federal building. LAPD, CHP are certainly in the area, but nobody has actually pushed the crowd or done anything like that. So I can't exactly tell why the crowd decided to start just kind of taking off. Is it because they're fighting? Yeah, so that's the guy. Okay, so the guy there on the left, the bald guy that is being hit, I don't know if he's an agitator or exactly what happened, but whoever he is, the crowd is not fond of him. And that was the same guy that they were just kind of fighting with earlier. And now, for whatever reason, it's pushed over to this area here at Temple and Judge John Aiso Street. And it looks like they've got him pushed up against that kind of guard shack or that parking shack there. And I can't tell, but it looks like he's bleeding. He's bleeding from the head
from
now.
The ear or
They're
something.
throwing things at him. We've seen people punch him. So I don't know exactly what's going on. This happened once or twice yesterday, too, where the crowd kind of fought amongst themselves, but really not,
goodness. No, we're We're seeing them with these flagpoles, and we know that those poles can certainly be used as weapons.
Yeah.
It looks like some of the folks there are trying to protect that man. He seems to be trying to get away from the crowd, but there are some that seem to continue to go after him.
And Mike, in this ramp, where does this ramp
I believe this is a
into?
courthouse. Judge John Aisa, let me go look here on my map. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of indicative of what's going on. You've got a group of people that wants this to remain peaceful, and you see that group of people trying to stop this fighting from happening. And then as we lose the chopper picture here for just a second, you've got the other group that is not interested in stopping it. They just kind of want it to keep going, and it's unclear exactly why they're upset with this person. That is, ironically, that is the ramp to the LAPD Metropolitan Jail that they are going up. So I'm sure LAPD will have to come out and deal with them if they go much further up their ramp there. But that is a police facility that they are now kind of crowded on here in this area. So that's, you know, kind of what they're looking at right now. So unclear exactly what prompted all this and what started all of this. But this is...
and is that the guy, Mike, that we see right there, the one who was hit?
Yeah, and he's got, I can't tell if that's an Adidas shirt or what it is, but yeah, that's the guy that was hit. He is bleeding from the head. It looks like they maybe have separated him enough from the group of people that were trying to go after him. So it's unclear exactly what, you know, they were doing that for. But yeah, hopefully they'll, you know, have to treat that head wound. He was bleeding a little bit.
Yeah, we saw it kind of like this fight started like on Los Angeles Street. And
right,
they went around the building, and then this is kind of like where they've ended up.
Yeah, right in front of the courthouse. So yeah, and again, you've got this group of people that obviously doesn't want this violence, and here's LAPD. So that's an LAPD sergeant that is now, you know, obviously because they're at an LAPD facility. So now they're going to try to get this situated. LAPD will probably call an RA, a rescue ambulance, for that man to at least get treated. So
yeah, it's interesting though, Mike, how, I mean, this crowd is not backing up. Oh,
there we go.
Boy. Yeah, I was just saying that
was a clash
officer is trying to get this person away from this crowd, and the crowd just seems to be taunting them and not backing off. And now we've seen the officer actually swing at this crowd. We see that the baton's out.
Less lethal.
Less lethal as well.
What they need to do is get this guy out of the area. Mike, if this is the problem and he's the, you know, what's creating this problem, they should have him, you know, just leave as quickly as they can.
Yeah, and get him out of there. And those officers, there's not enough officers. There's, you know, you got what, 4 officers there that are trying to deal, and excuse us while we're moving out of the way of this building here, but you got 4 officers there that are trying to, you know, tend to this guy and figure out how injured he is, and, you know, figure out also why this is happening. Okay, here's a couple more police cars. So yeah, you're right, Juan. They do need to get him out of there, or at least whoever is really intent on going after that guy. They
diffuse the situation,
take that guy into custody or do something here.
You know, we have been talking about how peaceful the protests have been. We hadn't seen much going on besides, you know, the drums and the people chanting, and now we've seen this man here in this looks like a gray or olive-colored hoodie, the Adidas hoodie. We did see that he was bleeding.
Now it looks like he's giving a press conference.
Well, it looks like the officer is kind of tapping him on the shoulder, like, "Hey, buddy, like, keep it quiet here. Just let's calm things down."
All those cameras pointed at him now, though.
Yeah, and we don't know what started this in the first place, what he was saying or what was happening that turned some of these people against him. We do know that they were throwing water bottles at him. People were taking swings at him. And we don't know who he is or why they have turned on him, but we definitely saw him get chased to this area. And now we've got a handful of officers that are trying to surround him and keep this crowd away from him.
We got 5 officers, Mike, right? Do you see 5 officers like kind of keeping the crowd away from him right now?
2 patrol cars there with, probably should be 5 officers. It's kind of hard to tell. 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4, maybe 5. Yeah. But, you know, what's hard too also is so much of the crowd is wearing black, which is the same color that, well, I guess LAPD is technically a dark navy blue, but, you know, the colors get similar and it gets difficult to see. But you see those, 5 officers, Juan, you're right, with shields kind of blocking this guy. But what's the plan? I mean, they got to get him out of there.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what's going to happen. It just goes to show you how quickly things can change out there. Peaceful protests can quickly, you know, just change. And right now things are calm. Officers have arrived. We don't know the story of this guy with the hoodie there, but as we saw just a short time ago, protesters were not happy that he was there.
Yeah, and it looks like some of those folks are starting to move away again from this person that police have surrounded. It seems like they are trying to get him to safety. They do have a couple of their cars there behind that line of people. It is interesting to see many of them have their phones lifted up, recording this person. We still don't know who he is. Right. We do want to, switch gears a little bit here and go to our Jasmine Veal, who is also on the ground. We've been checking in with her. Jasmine, we've seen our first little bit of a skirmish here with some folks. And officers have tried to protect someone. We don't know who this man is, but some of the other protesters seem to have turned on him, throwing water bottles. A couple of people have hit him. And we're trying to get an idea of what things are looking like in your area now.
Yeah, I mean, it's remaining peaceful, at least on this side, but, it's hot. People have been handing out water. Things can escalate pretty quickly if you get one group or someone upset at someone else. People have been being dropped off. Some of them, showing up dressed fully in their own type of riot gear, appearing to look like they are prepared for anything, right? With gas masks, with knee pads on, with gloves on, with masks on. And then you have others out here, moms and sisters and brothers who just are holding signs and banners, wanting to just get the message out that they want to put an end. They say to deportation. They want ICE out of here. They say they want the National Guard out of here. But the CHP, the LAPD, and that riot gear holding the line here on the street in front of the buildings. And many have been telling me that they need more peaceful bodies out here, not the violence, and described how things really escalated on Sunday. Take a look. On South Broadway, cleaning crews painting over graffiti Monday that lines several blocks in downtown LA. Making repairs to buildings with smashed glass along Los Angeles Street. And tow trucks removing burned Waymo cars hours after protests escalated into violence and destruction Sunday night.
It was mayhem.
What was that? Alicia DeQuina lives in downtown and says the actions of a few overshadow the main message of protesters who had gathered to rally against the multiple immigration operations that took place across LA since Friday.
There's the few that just used it as an opportunity, and then there's the ones that do it peacefully, but they still got hurt. 13-year-old girl got hit in the mouth yesterday with one of those things.
Jamie Klein, a mother, and her husband decided to join hundreds rallying Sunday outside City Hall. She says it was well organized and peaceful as families with kids started to march to the federal building on Alameda.
They were handing out waters. They were telling people, make sure you have a phone number in case you get arrested, but to write it on your arm or on your clothing.
She says when the LAPD showed up in riot gear alongside the National Guard, that's when things took a turn as they pushed back the crowd.
That's when they started shooting the pepper spray at people. There was no longer going in the air. It was hitting people deliberately.
The LAPD says it made 31 arrests over the weekend with charges ranging from assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer to looting, arson, and attempted murder with a Molotov cocktail. 5 officers were injured. Klein says she noticed later on in the day some people began to arrive with bad intentions.
They were getting ready to fight, and it was like, oh, these are different protesters. These guys, they want confrontation, and they're ready for it. So it was definitely a different type of protester.
Klein says she hopes more peaceful protesters will be back to make their voices heard here again very soon. Okay, back out here live. We walked down Los Angeles Street because things seemed to escalate a little bit between these CHP officers there holding the line at Aliso in Los Angeles with some protesters. They had started to kind of push back the crowd, and then some of these people here on the side that were standing started to yell back at the officers, waving flags in their faces, and then the CHP officers seemed to advance back to where they were standing in front of their vehicles. So we didn't really know what they were trying to accomplish, maybe letting some of the vehicles through since some cars were stuck here in this crowd. But things seem to have calmed down again, but there is a little bit of yelling happening between some of the protesters now. And some of them now handing out earplugs saying, put the earplugs in. presumably expecting maybe some flashbangs to go off. They're just kind of preparing if any loud noises were to happen, I guess, as everyone's putting in their earplugs right now and kind of advancing toward these officers. So we'll keep our eye on things, how they unfold right here next to the 101. I mean, we're over the 101 freeway, Union Station, not too far. And again, right here at Aliso. Amy, Juan?
Yeah, definitely things are looking not too bad there, Jasmine. All right, thank you for that update from the ground. Well, family members of people taken into custody during Friday's raids on businesses in the Fashion District, they want to know what's happening to their loved ones. Some spoke this morning in downtown LA. The group raised signs with pictures of their loved ones. They say ICE agents took dozens of indigenous immigrant workers into custody. And since then, they've struggled to find and make contact with them.
I was present during the raids. I saw with my own eyes the pains of the families, crying, screaming, not knowing what to do, just like me. That's why the families demand free of all workers, legal representation, and due process.
Ambiance, that's the company that employs these workers, makes clothing.
Well, LAUSD Superintendent Roberto Cavallo is reassuring parents and students that graduations will happen as the raids and protests continue.
We are one. At Los Angeles Unified, we have a commitment to protect the rights, the opportunities for every single child, every one of our workforce members, and the families we serve. No questions asked.
Well, Carvalho said earlier today there were federal vans parked within a couple of blocks of 2 LA schools, which he calls an intimidation tactic. He stressed that all graduation ceremonies happening this week will be protected by administrators and school police, which will set up perimeters around the events. They will also provide a protected path for parents and students to and from the ceremonies. Tomorrow is the last day of school in the district.
Good to know. And we continue to follow breaking news here at 4 o'clock. A crowd of protesters once again gathering in downtown LA for a 4th consecutive day.
That's right. SkyCal is overhead. This crowd is just outside the Robert Young Federal Building. We've watched as this crowd has grown. You can see those officers there. I believe that is the National Guard blocking the entrance there. So this large crowd gathering, they've been shouting. You see them with their signs, but they have not tried to get into the building. But there is definitely a large crowd, and we've been watching for a little more than an hour now, this crowd grow, and it has been mostly peaceful.
That's right. Monitoring the situation for us also, Mike Rogers on the desk. Mike, what do you have?
Yeah, so, just kind of watching this, as you mentioned, and actually, John, look at the corner of the building. So I was kind of noting like the gap between the law enforcement, the National Guard, and the protesters. But John, if you go in and there's going to be on the right side of the building there, it looks like the protesters are actually kind of under that overhang on the side of them as well. So we'll see how they handle that. But, it'll be the first time if they, have any kinds of clashing with the National Guard. It will really be kind of the first time of those clashings. Oh, thanks, John. We can't get too tight on that because of some of the language that's been spray painted literally everywhere in downtown. So that's been kind of difficult. But, nobody's really moved forward. The National Guard has not moved forward towards the protesters. The protesters have not moved forward towards the National Guard. They've just been in kind of that, stalemate. And this is the federal building. This is representative of what people are protesting. This is why they're choosing the federal building to do this, because it represents the federal government. It represents where many people that are going through immigration issues go to for court hearings, for detention hearings, all kinds of things like that. Right. So this is the peaceful type of protest that has been happening over the last couple of days. We're in a better situation than we were yesterday. By this time yesterday, there had already been an unlawful assembly declared. I went back and looked. That got declared at 3:20 in the afternoon yesterday when they declared unlawful assembly. That has not happened here. CHP is on the overpasses, making sure they don't get to the freeway here like they did yesterday. That was such a mess yesterday with those CHP officers getting pelted with rocks and literally anything the protesters could pick up to toss down at them. We haven't seen any arrests yet so far, so we're certainly in much better shape today than we were yesterday.
Yeah, clearly a new day, Mike. Things are a lot better there as we continue to follow this growing protest against the ICE raids that started on Friday at a clothing manufacturing company and at several other areas in Los Angeles. We know at a Home Depot, at a donut shop as well, where about 44 people were taken into custody for some sort of immigration issue.
That's right. We want to go back to our Jeff Nguyen, who is on the ground here. He's been watching this crowd. Jeff, you, I believe, are still in the same area there. have you seen things change as far as tension? Now we see more officers right in that area.
Yeah, so we are in the same area. So earlier we were on Los Angeles and basically Temple. Right now we are basically around the corner on Temple, and you can see right here, this is basically the federal building complex where we were earlier, but just around the corner. This side of the complex is the Roy Ball Courthouse, and where you can see there is a number of LAPD officers out here. They have basically set up this skirmish line, and they have taken control for now of the courtyard, if you will, outside the Roy Ball Federal Courthouse. You know, this courthouse is where David Huerta had his first court appearance earlier today. David Huerta, as you know, is the president of the SEIU, which is a labor union. He was arrested on Friday for what the federal government calls obstruction during one of the ICE operations in the Fashion District. And as you look on your screen right now, R is showing you more LAPD officers arriving here. This is not far from the Metropolitan Station. For those of us of a certain generation who grew up in LA, if you look at where those barbed wires are and where the overgrown grass is, you may remember this area once upon a time was where Parker Center was. In fact, you know, that gate to the right of us, we're not going to show it because there's a lot of profanity, but if you remember way back when O.J. Simpson surrendered to LAPD after that long speed pursuit, that's where he surrendered, and that's where KCAL had its famous shot of O.J. walking out. So not far from Little Tokyo right now, but basically I am not privy to LAPD strategy at all. I can only tell you empirically what I am seeing. So you have Temple right here. You have all of these LAPD officers deployed. Earlier, we showed you in front of the federal courthouse where you saw a number of National Guard members at the front door, as well as CHP. And then we also showed you right by the 101 freeway where LAPD had lined up as well. So in terms of operational tactics, I don't know that, but what I can tell you is that right now, traffic around the federal building is somewhat restricted because here on Temple, no one can go up and down Temple. In fact, earlier cars were asked to turn around. There were some people earlier who were exchanging words, I'll put it politely, with LAPD, but those folks have since gone. We do see a couple of legal monitors out here as well in the green hats. So their job is to make sure that people's civil rights are protected. You know, protecting people's civil rights, whether you agree with it or not, is something that has been, you know, at the forefront of the leadership for LAPD since May Day of 2007. So right now, things are pretty static right now, and we'll send it right back to you. Thank you.
All right, Jeff Nguyen reporting live for us.
And we continue to follow this breaking news here at 4 p.m. So far, a peaceful day of protests in downtown Los Angeles.
Yes, SkyCal is overhead. We are watching this crowd that is right there at the Robert Young Federal Building. The National Guard standing there, blocking this crowd from entering the building. But we've been watching as this crowd has grown. There were about 3 groups of protesters around downtown, and they've all kind of seemed to merge into this area. And we have seen lots of flags being waved and signs. We've heard a lot of just cheering and drums, but we have not seen any real violence in this area, which has been the best part. We know that the weekend was just really plagued with violence, cars being set on fire, lots of graffiti being done. And so far today, it's been relatively peaceful.
Yeah, the crowd getting a little larger there. And Mike Rogers on the desk monitoring the situation. Mike?
Yeah, just a couple seconds ago, I was keeping an eye because something spooked the crowd. And when I went back and kind of played back the recording here, it looks like the National Guard, all in a line, took a step forward towards the crowd. John's going to, if you can, John, double in on that guy with the less than lethal, it looks like a pepper ball gun maybe right there.
It's yellow, right?
Yeah, the yellow one. And so he moved forward, and that was being pointed at the protesters. So I don't know if that spooked them. There was, not that I could tell, at least from this angle, any rhyme or reason as to why the National Guard decided they wanted to advance, again, literally one step forward, but it was enough that it spooked the crowd. They kind of backed off a little bit, but now they're all kind of back right where they were. So I don't know if the National Guard has any plans to advance further on the crowd, or exactly kind of what the game plan is here. And John telling me the guy with less than lethal is a federal agent. So again, right here, the federal building, this is a mix of California National Guard as well as federal agencies. This is not local law enforcement. This is not LAPD. This is not the Sheriff's Department. This is federal government, the California National Guard that has been federalized, as well as federal law enforcement agents. And the crowd moved back up after that step forward, but certainly spooked
and you
them.
see it on their shields, Mike. It says California National Guard. And I think what may have happened was they stepped forward because I think the protesters may have gone up maybe one of the steps there of the building there. So maybe they were shortening the space that they had between them, and that's why they stepped forward to keep just a distance between. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I also want to point out, while we're looking at it, you'll notice that none of the California National Guardsmen have weapons, have guns. So in the days prior, we'd seen them, I believe we'd seen them with rifles or long guns here. That's not the case. Certainly the federal agents had that. But you look at here, all these National Guardsmen are only holding shields. You see, lack of a better term, billy clubs in their hands. And then you see the colored weapons here, which would be the less than lethal, the red handles, the yellow handles, pepper balls, those kinds of things. So that is a difference from what we saw Friday night when the FBI, ATF, DEA, when those guys were involved. They were certainly heavily armed. But none of the National Guard, John is telling me, are armed. They all appear to have, or not all of them, but a few of them have less than lethal. You saw the two with the red there on the end. And then the federal law enforcement, which it's hard to tell if it's DHS or exactly who it is, they've got the yellow less than lethal, which appear to me to be pepper balls.
And we continue to follow breaking news here at 4 p.m. Another day of protest in Southern California against the recent immigration raids. And so far, as you see here, a peaceful day in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah, SkyCal is overhead. You can see that large crowd there right in front of that federal building. They are on the street as well as on the sidewalk there. This has been just really kind of a area where so many of the protesters that were in various areas of downtown all seem to gather here. But as we've been watching, it has been peaceful. We've seen the crowd grow. We've seen them waving flags. They have signs. We heard drums beating and them cheering and chanting, and they have remained peaceful. We do want to go to a news conference now.
That's right. Let's go to Huntington Park Mayor and city leaders are giving us an update. Let's listen in.
The pulse of our community, hardworking families, strong neighborhoods, and a city that believes in fairness and dignity. This city is aware of the presence of immigration and customs enforcement agents that conducted an operation this morning at approximately 7:30 in the morning at 3040 Slauson Avenue. As of now, the city has not received any confirmation of who was arrested, how many individuals were arrested, or where they were taken. We're unable to confirm any of that. I was part of the LA County's meeting that took place where they said that they will be conducting operations of this nature for the next 30 days. The reason for this press conference, and we're calling it, is to denounce the actions that are being taken by the federal government. I want to make it very clear. The Trump administration's immigration policy was centered around public safety. The actions that we're seeing take place not only in Los Angeles, but throughout the region are counterintuitive to that narrative. What we're seeing is arbitrary enforcement of anybody that essentially looks or might be Latino in areas where they might be trying to find work or employment. With that being said, this morning there was a graduation. Just to give you an example of the type of fear that this sows. Miles Elementary was graduating at HP High School. Very quickly, rumors started spreading that ICE was outside. The auditorium erupted into chaos. Families that were supposed to be celebrating one of their child's achievements, a milestone, was turned into a horror and terrifying experience with the fear that they might not be able to spend the next day or continue to be a part of their family. That's the type of situations that our community is dealing with, and that's the type of the reason why we're standing up, myself as a mayor, and condemning these types of actions. I do want to highlight that these types of actions also sow division between law enforcement and our residents. I'm going to be inviting the chief of police to come up here. He has a message that will be conveyed in English and Spanish to our community members regarding the relationship between the community and law enforcement. I'm inviting now Chief Cosme Lozano.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My name is Cosme Lozano. I am the Huntington Park Chief of Police, and I just want to reassure the community and send a message that the Huntington Park Police Department does align with state law. We are not federal agents. We are local police officers. We do not enforce federal law, nor do we assist federal agents in immigration enforcement. We work very hard at maintaining trust with our community members. We never concern ourselves, our police officers never concern themselves with the immigration status of any resident in our community. I do plead with members of the community, if you are going to exercise your constitutional rights, to do so in peaceful protest and to not engage in any infractionary or criminal activity. Any concerns can be directed to the police department, or if anybody wants to report any criminal activity or anything that concerns them, obviously call our dispatch center, and our police officers and dispatchers will be happy to help you with that. En español les quiero reforzar a los miembros de la comunidad que el Departamento de Policía obedece las leyes de California. No somos agentes federales.
All right, we're listening to the Huntington Park mayor and police chief there talking about what they've been dealing in their community. This news conference also has the mayors of Maywood, Bell, Cudahy, Linwood, Southgate, and Vernon, all areas with a very large Latino population as well. The mayor saying that Huntington Park High School, the graduation ceremony there was ruined by rumors in the audience that ICE agents were gathering outside. That was not the case, but you're just saying how tense the situation there, and they want to get the word out to the constituents out there that they're doing the best they can to monitor what's going on in Washington as well as here at the local level. Right to Compton now, where a restaurant became a safe haven as protests escalated over the weekend. Both demonstrators and law enforcement found refuge inside.
Yeah, the owner tells our Rena Nakano it wasn't about taking sides, it was about protecting her community.
Pupusas on the grill, fried eggs on the plate. It's business as usual at La Ceiba Restaurante in Compton. But on Saturday afternoon, owner Elizabeth Mendoza says she was afraid for her life.
I feel like a war.
Her restaurant was feet away from the violent clash between protesters and law enforcement, agitators doing donuts and burning cars. As an immigrant from El Salvador, Mendoza says she sympathizes with the protesters. She says the raids are affecting many of her longtime customers.
My kids, my husband, we're okay, but I know a lot of people they don't have paper, they don't have anything, but they want to work.
So when protesters needed water, napkins, or food, she handed it to them. As the situation escalated, she realized her business was the only one open.
Mendoza tells me throughout the day she got phone calls from her friends and family telling her to close up the shop and leave. But she tells me something told her to stay.
No, I can't. I need to help you when the people need me.
At around 5:30, an LA sheriff's deputy came in, fully armed. He was crouched over, suffering from what seemed to be a chemical irritant. Seconds later, a few more walked in. Then a female deputy took off her gas mask. She was in tears.
One of these get milk, put milk and ice in her face.
Mendoza and her employees escorted a few of the deputies into the walk-in freezer to cool them down. They sat others down, gave them food and water, and began fanning them.
Everybody work for help the police.
When asked why they did it, Mendoza says it's not about siding with one or the other. To her, both the protesters and deputies are her beloved customers. They're part of her community.
People like me, they work to the community.
In Compton, I'm Rena Nakano, KCAL News.
It is amazing to see those folks just helping.
Really touching to see those folks take action here. All right, back now to our breaking news in downtown LA, where, as you can see here, the crowd is getting bigger.
Yeah, SkyCal is overhead. You can see these officers are lined up. We've seen LAPD, we've seen LA County Sheriffs, the National Guard there in front of that federal building. We do know that we've been hearing reports that some 700 Marines are coming from 29 Palms. Right now we are watching as law enforcement is trying to block this stretch of the roadway. You can see the larger crowd there in front of the federal building, but the officers are lined up there trying to keep this area blocked off because they don't want this crowd to make their way onto the 101, Mike.
Yeah, a couple of differences between last night and tonight. First of all, LAPD and law enforcement have a much better handle on where they are allowing the crowd to get to. Yesterday, it was so difficult for them because the crowd was everywhere, and it was really hard for them to get a hold of it. Now, this is LAPD holding this skirmish line here. I want John to go back to that white truck because I want to show you what this white truck does.
We talked about this white truck earlier, right, Mike?
Yeah, so this white truck, if you look right, no, different truck.
Different truck.
On top of it, those are speakers. So this is what LAPD will use to declare an unlawful assembly and order dispersal of the area. Because in order to legally do that and to then be able to legally charge somebody, the crowd has to know that they are there unlawfully. So LAPD will use this truck to shout at the protesters, to tell them that the unlawful assembly has been declared. For the record, we don't know yet that it has been declared, but they are ready to do so if they choose to go down that route and declare that unlawful assembly. Though we have not seen yet any kind of issues with the crowd yet. They've not clashed really with each other once we saw, but they've not clashed with law enforcement at all. It has been pretty tame. Now, speaking of that clash we saw earlier between the protesters, LAPD tweeted, if anybody has video evidence of that incident, they're being asked to call LAPD's Central Division to turn that over because they do want to conduct an investigation to figure out what started that man we saw was bleeding from the head, assaulted, at least fairly seriously for him to be bleeding that way. The crowd chasing him up to LAPD's jail, which was kind of an interesting fact there. But so LAPD and law enforcement doing a much better job of where they're allowing the crowd to get to tonight, which is something that did not go very well for them last night.
And that's going to be key tonight, Mike, is just where they can go, where they can protest, and it looks like the police and the National Guard are in place.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And perfect spot to keep them off of the 101.
Yeah.